Good afternoon, everyone. I'll begin the session now. This is the Leadership Dialogue on Science, Technology, and Innovation Roundtable with the Scientific Advisory Committee. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shakuntala Haraksingh-Tilstead. I am the Director of the CGIAR Nutrition, Health and Food Security Impact Area Platform and the Chair of the Scientific Advisory Committee to the United Nations System Coordination Hub. Science, technology, and innovation are powerful accelerators of food systems transformation. An integrated approach to science, technology, and innovation can unlock solutions for the health of people, animals, plants, and our planet. Simultaneously, global capacity can be strengthened to identify, develop, adapt, and scale up the deployment of appropriate technologies and innovations. We have about 150 participants and many distinguished guests with us today. So please allow me to say all protocols observed and offer a warm welcome to all. Let me begin by sharing some useful information. We are being live streamed through the virtual platform. Simultaneous interpretation is being provided in Arabic, Chinese, French, Russian, and Spanish. You can select the language of your choice through the control panel of your headphones or through the language panel at the bottom of your screen if you are following us online. Today, we will hear from leaders on pathways to operationalize systems thinking and incorporate knowledge-based decisions using science, technology, and innovation to drive food systems transformation. Then we have a panel of experts providing us better insights on mobilizing the Scientific Advisory Committee to enable food systems transformation. We will then open the floor to the audience for engagement, moderated by the Chief Scientist of FAO before closing the leadership dialogue. To open this dialogue, may I please invite Dr. Chu Dong-yu, Director General of the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, to deliver his remarks.
Okay, thank you. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so delighted to come to here to share my thoughts with you. My personal thought, being in my former life as a scientist, as a chief scientist, or as a leading scientist, or what the name you call it. Dr. Fang Shengge is here. When I was a vice president, he also worked of the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences. He worked with me. I recruited 300 talent from all over the world, and the Fang was one of them. So I'm proud of I picked up him together with my boss that time. But let's see. Don't play our own silos. You saw that every politician understand your issues, not be naive. You are scientists. You are leading scientists. You have first priority for us to promote science. Let the politician, let the farmer, let the businessman to understand science. And then to create interest for them to learn in science, apply science. That's my whole life, 40 years. Any position, I started to do that. Yeah, even in FAO. I can tell you, my personal observation, all the PWB staff in FAO, not more than 50% staff, they understand science. Might be less than 30%. Only on some level of science. Because majority, they are diplomats, they are administrators, they are bureaucrats. I always say they are bureaucrats. They read the statement, You see, the prepared statement for me, I don't like to read the statement, you know. So that's number one. Number two, not only tell yourself how many challenges you face. You saw that you are only person to understand the challenge, understand the press situation, understand all the problems. If you don't support me, the world will be end. No, don't scare the politician. They know more even than you, all the situation. But what we can assist them to think systematically, scientifically, data-based. Some politicians, they understand the data, but some not. Maybe they're not the holistic way, systematic way. Especially now the digital world. They got a very fragmented information. That's a way, that's our duty to have them, if we have a good review on the specific issues. For instance, what means data? From the traditional data to the big data, from the commercial data to the free data or public data. Data, they have three types of natural. So please offer systematic interpretation of science. And then you offer them a solution, not a single solution, not a silo solution. A lot of people, are in face of the Minister of Education. We have to establish our own popular science to the different audience. That's why I take responsibility from the DSG, establish that committee. I told the SG, I said, I was scientist. I know how to build a solidarity. Van Braun was the lead of the small group for the Food System Summit. And then the FAO used to have a high-level expertise panel. And then the others. So now I merged it in one. Because we need a different perspective of science, even the social science and the natural science and others. So let's build a solidarity among the different subjects of science. And then learn each other and challenge each other. And then we can get more solidarity and more consensus recommendation to the politician, to the people who didn't understand the deep, that wide knowledge of science. And last but not least, I hope you can really help me, help FAO, how to speed up the transformation of agro-food systems. When I say the four betters, you should have the scientific solution and the suggestion to the Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Finance, Minister of Education, even Prime Minister. And also transformation agro-food system, not only food. I know a lot of science talk about the food system, but FAO, F is food, right? A is not food, not only food maybe. The fiber crops, it's not for food, but we are. FAO mandate work on the crops, herb, and the fishery, and also the forestry, and now the OCB, the climate change and the biodiversity, not for food. At least not for short time we have, and gene-edited technology. So that's why I keep saying agro-food system. A lot of members, they have a name of agriculture and food or agriculture and rural affairs. Actually, we don't have an organization for rural development. FAO should take the leading role on that. All the members, Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Agriculture Food, they always be the window minister for rural development. Rural development, not only the policy on the rural women, rural youth, and the social protection. USDA, always called the USDA, but then they covered everything, yeah? So even the legal issues. So please understand your country, your region, and globally, and that's how we can assist the politician and the legal and the other partners and even academy people work together, and civil society. So that's why the hand-in-hand initiative leading the change of the way of thinking and the business model. and based on science and data. And that's why we based on the big data. So for that, I expect a lot of holistic way, comprehensive way to think, jump out of your own silos, your own box. And it's a real challenge yourself, innovative yourself. And then you can influence other people, build some consensus, or think, you said, on the same page. Think together, learning together, working together, and contribute together. And thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. On the stage with me today, we have Her Excellency Anna Maria Benini, Minister of University and Research, Italy. Her Excellency Mariam Al-Himri, Minister of Climate Change and Environment, United Arab Emirates. And Her Excellency Jennifer Moffett, Undersecretary for Marketing and Regulatory Programs, United States Department of Agriculture, United States of America. This panel of leaders will provide us insights to national pathways using science, technology, and innovation to make informed decisions and shape the future strategies for food systems transformation. Your Excellency Benini, the floor is yours. You can, as you choose, from here. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Director General, honorable fellow ministers, Madam Moderator and panel members, representatives of civil society, of academia and research. First of all, I would like to extend my greetings and thanks to the delegation that came to Rome from all over the world. For me, for us, for Italy, it is an honor to host you here. My gratitude goes to FAO and to the work of the entire UN community, which proves to be a driving force for awareness on problems and for possible solutions, which is the most important thing. To me, it is an honor to speak about an issue that is key to our action for the implementation of the UN 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development Goals. Our duty, amidst the difficult challenges of the international scenario and food systems, is to connect science, technologies, and innovation. Excellent scientific realities often fail to turn their discoveries into practical applications. And often technologies fail to provide generalized, reality-changing innovations. Our task is to ensure that innovation can feed the whole world through the dissemination of scientific and technological opportunities. In June, I had the honor to be present at the birth of the United Nations University Institute on Big Data and Artificial Intelligence in Bologna, and to meet Professor Marwala, rector of the United Nations University. It is also in Bologna that Leonardo, the world's fourth most powerful supercomputer, operates. The technical skills and technological capabilities of the Bologna research ecosystem and of Italy as a whole offer a fundamental research to the study of climate change and the challenge of food, computing capacity, to fight large-scale waste, to produce more and in a better way while respecting the environment. Innovation is imperative. Today, startups in agri-tech sector can take advantage of tools such as artificial intelligence, which enables them to make different phases of cultivation more efficient and thus imagine new solutions. Thanks to satellite technologies, early and large-scale identification of pests is possible, and it could have save nearly 1 billion tons of crops per year, and reduce water use by between 5 and 10%. The great challenge that we face now is to make startup innovations widely available, to ensure that millions of small farmers can benefit from them, and that the most vulnerable countries can make wide use of them. On this issue, I consider the role of the Scientific Advisory Committee to be of the utmost importance to show that an alliance between sustainability and technology is more than possible. It is not only possible, but vital in order to meet the challenges posed by climate, demography, and even international instability. We need to involve our citizens more and more in innovation processes, but to do so, we need to communicate, to spread the concrete value of science in improving our lives. This issue was addressed at the G7 in Sendai, and it will be at the heart of our broad and inclusive action in the Italian G7 presidency. This international forum aims to give a perspective between now and 2025. In 2025, Italy aims to be the startup nation in the agri-tech field, to connect our Mediterranean food culture and tradition with the opportunities of technology, digital and artificial intelligence. We are working towards this. We created the new National Center for Agri-Tech in Naples. Do you know it?
I was there. Very impressive.
Is it? Good. You have to come again and see how impressive it has become, which will work to develop new projects and support innovative businesses. And the new Center of Biodiversity in Palermo. Have you been there?
No.
So you have to come. As a minister of a country affected by extreme weather events, I share the belief that a multilateral approach is needed to tackle the challenges of a climate and international governance, and also to combat full inflation. I know that the problems that many governments are facing are not just about economics and technology. They also concern, as you said before, education, both education, higher education, academical education. For this reason, the Italian university system and research infrastructures are and will be open to international collaboration. I believe that scientific diplomacy plays a decisive role for common security. Italy is actively participating with numerous partners in the Partnership for Research and Innovation in the Mediterranean area, a program which EU and Italian funds for research in the Mediterranean, including in the field of water resources and agricultural systems. Together with our international partners, we want to develop new undergraduate and graduate programs and joint programs to foster the alliance between sustainability and technologies. New skills and continuous training are needed to face the upcoming challenges of the reliability of food systems. Food systems need pragmatism to tackle what one of the fathers of this international community, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, called freedom from want. Freedom from want. This freedom is key for individuals and countries to achieve true self-determination. This is precisely why we must increasingly connect science, technology, and innovation. We should secure, through our cooperation, global cooperation, a future that will really allow freedom for all. Thank you very much.
Very good.
Thank you so much for your valuable insights. May I now invite Her Excellency Almira to address us. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and great to be here amongst all of you. Thank you so much, Dr. Chu Dongyu, for having us here. Thank you for all the teams that have worked tirelessly to bring us all together. Yes, science, technology, and innovation, actually that is the key of what the UAE has become today is because of innovation. We are a water-scarce country. We have less than 5% arable land. But how have we made it that we're one of the most food-secure countries in the world? It's because of innovation. Now, our country has put a plan forward. We have this National Food Security Strategy since 2018, and it's really based on innovation. Trying to increase local production in the environment we're in can only happen with innovation across the food supply chain. So if I remember when we started this in 2017, 2018, there were maybe a handful of ag tech companies. Today, it's over 150 ag tech companies in just a very short span, and of course, also during COVID as well. But this has really seen how we've basically harnessed the power of technology and innovation. I've never seen such tasty berries before, I have to say. We're growing berries, so blueberries, strawberries, blackberries in the desert now. And this is all because of innovation. And many of you may know Emirates Airlines. It has its own vertical farm growing all the leafy greens. So the salads you have on board comes from the Bustanica farm. This is a 130,000 square feet farm that produces about 2,700 kilos of leafy greens on a daily basis. And if you think about that, that's how much you could actually grow on a 900-acre land. So this is the power of innovation. So the UAE is really putting a lot of effort in changing the blueprint of the country to try and harness technology and innovation. And also some of its companies are now taking this technology to other countries around us who face the same kind of climate that we have. Also, another driver for science and technology and innovation is trying to build the ecosystems. So we have the Food Tech Valley is being developed. Just recently, the Innovation Oasis is another ecosystem that's being developed in the capital city of Abu Dhabi. And this is really to drive the mindsets, looking at new alternative proteins, looking at how we can make sure that there's enough food for all in the many years to come. Food Tech Challenge is something else that the UAE does to drive innovation and really to get young people to come into the space. I know some of you have heard me always say this. I don't like to use the word farmers with the young people because they have a certain perception. So I tell them, how about you being the agri-technologist of the future? So this is where they combine the technology and their love for food. And we're actually seeing young people set up their farms in the city. So they take a warehouse, an empty warehouse, and they turn it into an urban farm. Partnerships. We've partnered with the US in Aim for Climate, and I'm sure many of you have heard the momentum we've built and what we saw in Washington in May, the innovations that we've seen. I mean, just unbelievable. If we can scale up and we can bring the financing to this, we can solve so many things. So I think the power of innovation is so huge. As you know, I announced yesterday the COP28 Food and Agriculture System Transformation Agenda. This is where we have the 4 pillars, and one of the pillars is all about innovation because it's such a powerful tool. So I just want to say that we're really looking forward to having you all come on board, build the momentum. Now that we have this agenda where we're actually basically taking all the existing amazing initiatives that are out there and put them under one umbrella and drive this vehicle forward, because we need that accelerated approach because time is not on our side. And so with that, I just want to say the UAE is completely open to share these innovations, share these experiences, because we have experienced firsthand what innovation does. And I remember, I say this story quite often, Secretary Vilsack in the US, when we first approached him and said, we want to do something with you on agriculture, he was like, okay, the UAE is not an agriculture country. They import most of their food. Why would they be interested in agriculture? But the key here was the innovation aspect, how 2 very different countries can work together, but because the core being innovation. So it's such a driver. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for sharing some exciting innovations from the UAE. I now call on Her Excellency Moffat. The floor is yours.
I turned it off. There we go. It's a pleasure to be here amongst this really distinguished panelist of ladies here. Really, as I'll just highlight that transforming to a more sustainable, more resilient food system is really about making sure that we are empowering science-based, data-driven decision-making, that we add and that we make sure that we have inclusive as well as innovation global access to all that we do. We must seek to mobilize the development of the transformation innovations and to provide farmers and others along food chains around the world with access to tools, technologies, and approaches that they earn they earn a living, while consistently supplying nutritious, affordable food, protecting the environment. There's really no one size fits all to scientific exploration, to scientific data, to scientific information. There's no off-the-shelf fixes. It's really about really finding and identifying and using science as we lead and innovate together. And so that's why last week, Secretary Vilsack announced a $300 million investment in monitoring, measuring, and verification, MMRV, in the work that we're doing on climate-smart agriculture and forestry, looking at and making sure we've got the scientific backbone for greenhouse gas reduction as well as carbon sequestration in agriculture and forestry. As he talks about this scientific backbone, that is really the key and core to what we do. As someone who comes from a farming background, lots of information is shared with agriculture. Lots of information is coming to farmers and ranchers, and to have science come together and data come together, and to have government and academia partner together so that we're identifying a solid set of tools that farmers can use to innovate, that farmers can use to continue to progress and grow great food, fiber, and feed, are really important things. As a farmer, I know how much we're busy farming, and we don't have always the ability to be able to decipher and understand different data sets and tool chests that are available. But the ability for scientists and academia to come together to really connect the dots and make that happen, I think, is important. We have seen incredible, as UAE certainly has as well, we've seen incredible innovation in the agricultural sector as a result of scientific data. Following science, using data to drive the decision-making process that we have, not just in policy, but for decision-making process that farmers and ranchers have across the country, whether that is maximizing water utility. We have many arid areas of the United States, maximizing water utility, resource utility, fertilizers and other nutrients, maximizing the ability to get the most productivity in a most sustainable way is very important. We've made great progress in the ability that we can to continue to grow healthy, nutritious food in a way that is conserving our natural resources, that is managing our natural resources, and in many ways enhancing our natural resources. In the United States, one example of this is in how we use science and data to connect to farmers and ranchers is place-based decision connection tools such as the USDA climate hubs. The USDA climate hubs are hubs that are around the country that are designed to take the information that scientists have developed, that academia has developed, that the government has developed, and bring it down to farmers and ranchers so we can answer questions that farmers and ranchers have in different climates around the country, different climates, different production regions, because every production system and every production region is very unique. So through the climate hubs, the stakeholders have helped drive tool and technology development to help ensure that those decision-making tools are user-driven and decision relevant. In May, USDA launched the International Climate Hub, which is a platform to share research, to share tools, to share collaborative efforts as best practices on a global scale. to improve our world's adaptivity and ability to adapt to climate change and to mitigate its impact, ensuring that farmers and ranchers, along everyone in the food system, has access to cutting-edge innovation. Farmers and ranchers in the United States, farmers and ranchers across the globe have access to cutting-edge innovation is very important, and that happens not just by leveraging evidence-based science and innovation, doing so in a way that there are digital tools available for farmers, for producers, for the food system around the globe. Digital access is a very important aspect. However, we know that too long we've had a digital divide that has left too many people in rural communities behind, unable to compete in the global economy and unable to access the services and resources that they need to be successful. So as we work on enhancing and working and developing the scientific backbone, pooling together all the tools and resources, really leading with science, really leading with innovation, also making sure we are not leaving people behind by making sure that we have the critical tools that people need through bridging and breaking that digital divide that we have so far too long experienced. So I will wrap up there. I think what's really important is that we really need a big tent. We absolutely need a big tent for promoting innovation, promoting new technologies, ensuring that science is the backbone behind that big tent is absolutely key and important. Making sure that we're promoting the adoption of internationally recognized science and risk-based regulatory platforms is key to the work that we do as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Once again, a huge thank you to these leaders for providing valuable insights and food for thought to many.
Small suggestion. You see, I'm sitting here because I'm the only one man. You always talk about the gender balance. Eh?
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
See you there. Bye-bye. Thank you.
The Scientific Advisory Committee to the UN Food Systems Coordination Hub is a broker of science and evidence, composing of 29 eminent scientists from around the world, dedicated to addressing systemic changes and challenges that exist in transformation pathways through credible, evidence-based, and science-driven solutions. Before we proceed to the panel discussion with the SAC members, may I please call upon all members of the Scientific Advisory Committee present today to rise. So I would very much like you to see who the members of the SAC are. And may I also ask you, the audience, to reach out to these SAC members to discuss with them as we all move forward to transforming food systems. Let me now invite Her Excellency Amina Gurib Fakim, former President of the Republic of Mauritius and Scientific Advisory Committee member, to come forward and moderate the panel discussion. Joining on stage will be the 4 co-chairs of the Scientific Advisory Committee, as well as a representative from the United Nations Global Sustainable Development Report Group. Please welcome co-chair Professor Barbara Burlingame, Professor, Public Health, Nutrition, and Food Systems, Massey University. Co-chair Dr. Hilal Elver, Orphalia Center for Global and International Studies, University of California, and former UN Special Rapporteur for the right to food. Co-chair, Dr. Shenging Fan, Dean of Academy of Global Food Economics and Policy, China Agricultural University, and CGIAR System Board member. Co-chair, Professor Jean-François Soussadin, Vice President for National Research Institute for Agriculture, Food and the Environment, France. And also joining us is Dr. Ibrahim Hati from the United Nations Global Sustainable Development Report Group. Your Excellency, Gurab Fareem, may I hand over the discussion to you?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's indeed a great pleasure to be moderating this panel. And I think I take on from what the director has just said. We are scientists, and I think our role is to give the best so that we can really support policies for science, technology, innovation that will enhance food production, because at the end of the day, food is 3 times a day, 7 days a week, and it is culture, it's tradition, but at the same time, is to ensure something very fundamental so as to keep people not hungry. So here today, we have, first of all, to thank the FAO for having, and the director for setting up this panel. So here today, we'll have some key discussion with some of the co-chairs, along with Dr. Ibrahim Hati from the UN Global Sustainable Development Report Group. And so I will kick off by asking Professor Barbara Burlingame with a question. What are the key challenges faced in establishing robust science policy society interfaces at the national level, and how can these challenges be overcome? Barbara?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to serve on the SAC and also to be part of this panel. My first point is we have been here before. Many of us have been sitting in this room, some of us as long ago as 1991 for the International Conference on Nutrition. We're not starting from scratch. We're not even picking up just from the UN Food System Summit of 2021. There is a 70-year or more history of summits within the UN system, specialized agencies. We've had the environment summits, nutrition summits, world food summits. We've had summits from which we developed the Millennium Development Goals and then the SDGs. And the most recent global summit was the UN Food System Summit, and now the stock-taking moment. Each of these summits, over 70 years, have had goals and targets. Some were aspirational, many were realistic, all were science-based, and largely we have fallen short. Even when an agency or a country has a robust convergence of science and policy, there's competition, sectoral and public-private. There are conflicts, and there's often simply inaction. We need to build on the past. We need to look at the initiatives, UN initiatives, country initiatives, and see where they have succeeded and where they have not succeeded, and build on the history, lest we repeat some of the lack of success. Within the SAC, we have thematic areas, priority areas, one of which is transforming agri-food systems within planetary boundaries. We acknowledge that sustainable diets require sustainable food systems, which require healthy ecosystems, plant, animal, microbiological. Transformation of food systems require compromises and trade-offs and short-term pain, economic, for example, and we need the long-term transformations, which require the hard decisions. At the same time, there are benefits and real opportunities that can compensate for the pain of the transformations, and the consequences of inaction are far greater. The SAC covers science, technology, and innovation for food system transformations, and it is fundamental to rely on both empirical sciences and lived sciences, for example, of indigenous peoples and their traditional food and knowledge systems, and to accept that there is no conflict between innovation and tradition. We know, finally, that I just want to emphasize the 6 pillars of food security that we're all dealing with. Everybody knows the first 4, access, availability, utilization, and stability, but one of the science policy interfaces has recommended another 2, which the CFS hopefully will adopt officially. Agency, a seat at the table for everyone, and sustainability, which is one of the key words that we're talking about in this forum. Thanks.
Thank you, Barbara. I think you picked up some very, very important point, is that let's not reinvent the wheel. Let us focus and try to get as much of the sciences into policy making. So the next question I have, Hilal, for you, Hilal, is what are some of the options for improving equity and fairness in global decision making? Further, what approaches are more effectively inclusive, especially with respect to indigenous peoples and local communities, and above all, compatible with the perspective of science, technology, innovation, while upholding fair, just, equitable, and sustainable transformation of food systems?
Thank you very much, Amina. It's quite a challenging question, and I'm going to try to make it in 3 minutes if I can. First of all, to include all food systems partners in decision making, an inclusive, effective, and meaningful manner is challenging because of the large power of gaps among those involved parties, but far from impossible to achieve. To realize this difficult job as an interdisciplinary and democratic scientific committee, to be legitimate, should follow a series of principles in our own work that we set up our colleagues from the CFS, HLPE earlier, such as being independent, transparent, accessible, consultative, and evidence-based work that uses variety of knowledge, as Barbara mentioned, that includes local, traditional, and indigenous knowledge. We don't make any distinction between peer-reviewed scientific information and other traditional knowledge. These principles are, that I mentioned, similar to or driven by international human rights standards such as participation, accountability, non-discrimination, transparency, empowerment, and equality, and such as other things. Human rights principles are legal obligations, not voluntary or optional policy choices, and not only for scientific committees like ours, but for all member states, international institutions, private sector, and civil society. By following these principles, scientific, technological, and innovative methods will be available and accessible to all, regardless of economic and political power imbalances, which we heard United Minister was a fantastic innovations, but it's crucial for this kind of innovations will be available indigenous peoples, local communities, and peasants, as well as for the least developed countries. Moreover, we should recognize and actively support women as agents of change in food system and scientific communities, which I think this is a very well balanced committee as far as we are. And finally, we should keep in mind that technology is not a silver bullet. Science makes clear that hunger and malnutrition is a social problem, and innovations need to incorporate standards of good governance that are equitable, just, sensitive to natural habitats, while respecting, protecting, and fulfilling the right to food and the right of nature. and we're going to work all these principles, hopefully implement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hilal, for stressing the human rights approach and also women as being agent of change. So the next question we have for Jean-François Susana. What role, Jean-François, can interdisciplinary research and collaboration play in finding holistic and innovative solutions to complex sustainable development issues?
Thank you. Well, let me say that to support food system transformation, we need to scale up interdisciplinary research, both across scales and across sectors. We need to connect agriculture, food, health, climate, biodiversity, and natural resources issues, while also addressing highly diverse regional circumstances and high level of inequalities. So let me take 3 examples that help understanding how systemic research could support the summit goals and how the SAC could help guiding this development in research, innovation, and technologies. So I took 3 simple questions. Where are we? Where can we go from here? And how could we get there? So this first question, where are we, addresses the progress we are making with our food systems. To answer this question, we do have a universally agreed compass, and this is the Agenda 2030 with its 17 SDGs and with targets defined for each SDG. However, we do not have a consistent set of indicators to monitor all dimensions of food system transformation, both at global scale and across countries. This requires indeed a shared metric with a consistent set of indicators that can be supported by monitoring systems. So answering this "where are we" question demands interdisciplinary systems analysis from local to national and to global scale, and better assessing how food system transformation may affect the SDG targets. The second simple question is, where can we go from here? We need to understand how to minimize the trade-offs and improve the synergies in the most appropriate, inclusive, and efficient manner to navigate the food systems transitions. Indeed, we have integrated simulation models that provide a landscape of scenarios and options for the future, including options for deep transformations towards sustainability. However, such models should better account for uncertainties like climate extremes, ecosystem tipping points, conflicts, pandemics, and become more realistic with options fitted to the regional and local context. In this process, research should be policy relevant, but not policy prescriptive. The third and last question is, how could we get there? Indeed, there are many emerging technologies that need to be developed and assessed, and we need a horizon scanning process for this, including the agtech, the food tech, the biotech, the digital tools, the artificial intelligence, as well as nature-based solutions, agroecology, and social innovations. However, as was said, there is no silver bullet for food system transformation. We should scale up a number of integrative responses options that are already well known, like reducing the food waste or restoring the soil, etc. We know those options, they have multiple co-benefits and a relatively low cost, but they need to be supported by innovation. We also know of the past dependencies and of the multiple lock-ins that may slow down the food systems transitions. Therefore, research is needed to accelerate innovation, for instance, through living labs. This requires a co-design process with all stakeholders, combining scientific knowledge and traditional knowledge, and supporting place-based innovation. I would like to conclude with the role of international engagement and cooperation. We need to build strong international partnerships in science and innovation, especially with low-income countries. We need to support capacity building by investing in universities and in research organizations to achieve food system transformations through actionable knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-François. Thank you for stressing on the need for interdisciplinarity and also for policy to be relevant and not prescriptive. And so that leads us on to the next speaker, Dr. Sheng Fan, who will, the question is, how can countries foster and sustain partnerships between academia, industry, government, and civil society to achieve the SDGs and meet targets set by international agreements like the Paris Agreement and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think firstly, government needs to develop a food system strategy or agri-food system strategy, development a roadmap to achieve the final objectives. I think the data information, knowledge platform will be so critical. So here, the second is our researcher, the academia you asked. I think today, as researchers, we're evaluated by how many publications we have published, Nature or whatever journals. I think in the future, the researchers should be evaluated by their final results, outcome. And we are willing to do that as a researcher. The third is the private sector. I mean, one study I involved says that the food system has a hidden cost of $12 trillion. But in the meantime, the private sector can use that as an opportunity to gain $4.5 trillion a year. So it's an opportunity for the private sector. Now, you all talk about about the role of farmer. My grandfather was a farmer, rice farmer. He actually used dry-wet alternating technology to irrigate the rice, partly because that time, you need the manpower to bring the water to the field. So he has been practicing that for ages, for many years. So now suddenly it's a new finding from a scientist that we need to practice that. Because of the cheaper fuels can bring the water to the field anytime. So water is on the field like this thick. So I think learning, by the way, my grandfather is also good in circular agriculture. He had livestock, chicken, pigs, sheep. He does not depend on much external inputs to recycle everything. I mean, this sort of traditional knowledge is also part of our SAC work, innovation. I very much agree on that. Now, I also wanted to emphasize the role of consumers. So what we eat really matters to our health, from the good nutritious diets, but also it really matters to our environment, to our climate change. So when you eat next meal, make sure that you take that into consideration. So what's the role of SAC here? I think SAC should not just work to support the national level as a policy-making strategy development. I think equally important is to work with other stakeholders, farmers, consumers, the private sector at the national level. I'll end here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fan, for stressing the importance of research, innovation, the impact of research innovation, of course, existing innovation, and not just impact factor. I think we should move beyond this. So now we turn to Dr. Ibrahima Hatti from Senegal, and give us some reflection, Ibrahima, on the discussion linking the UNFSS+2 with the findings of the Global Sustainable Development Report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The 2023 GSDR report builds on the previous report, the 2019, by retaining the 6 entry points and including sustainable food systems and healthy nutrition, but also adding a 5th lever to the 4th lever of the 2019 GSDR, which is capacity building. In addition to that, the report focuses on providing a framework for transformation, especially focusing on accelerating transformation. One of the main messages from GSDR is that accelerating transformation is possible and inevitable. The fact is we should choose how to do it. History has shown us that accelerating transformation is possible. In our area, the Green Revolution has shown us that's possible. We have an example on that. We need for that to move beyond niche innovations and practices and significantly scale up by taking a much strategic and a systematic perspective. We need science to drive transformation. and to be able to make significant progress. The action towards a sustainable path must be rooted in science that is multidisciplinary, equitable, inclusive, openly shared, and socially robust. We need science that is socially robust, and you talked about that already. One of the calls of action from the report urges member states to establish an SDG transformation framework for accelerated transformation. And in one of the 5 elements, one of the most important is the need for national plans for transformative accelerated action, which is grounded in science and inclusive processes to identify and harness SDG synergies and reduce the negative transboundary spillovers. So those are things that are key in this report. And just to finish up, areas where science could do more to inform decision-making for acceleration, because the report focuses on acceleration for transformation. First is understanding complex dynamics in SDG transformation, but especially looking into the impediments that can block this acceleration. Secondly, finding feasible solutions and pathways that could win political support. And finally, critically assess SDG governance processes. If you look at those governance processes, you may find out about the impediments, you may look at the feasible solutions and pathway, so you need to look at that. But above all, in the case of food system, when we recognize that food systems require different kind of transformations in different countries and regions, because context matter, researchers are urged to conduct systematic analysis of successes to see how transformation were effectively managed in different contexts, and also to look at common impediments to acceleration so that we can overcome them. So conducting systematic analysis may help in proposing solution at the national level or at the regional level. Let me stop here, Chair, and wait for questions.
Thank you. Thank you to all the panel members and for highlighting, also looking at the challenges that we have ahead of us at the level of the SAC. But I think, as the DG has said this morning, our role is to focus on the science, to bring in solutions through science, policy, innovation. And the advantage that we have is that we are not confined by the 5-year or 3-year mandate that most politicians have. So let us think how to really bring solutions to the table so that we really address the core sector of targeting SDG 2. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Group Fakim, and the panelists for your valuable insights. I now have the pleasure to invite Dr. Espehani Iluafi, Chief Scientist, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, to moderate the audience engagement.
Thank you very much, Shakuntala. Good afternoon, everybody. So we got about 10 minutes for a discussion with the audience. So the floor is open. We won't have maybe questions, but rather comments, as we won't have time really for response. I'm going to start on my right with Ruben Echeverria.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. I think this has been a great panel. After all the discussions in a day and a half to go back to science, I think is very, very important. I am a member of the Scientific Advisory Committee, and I just have a couple of very brief points to add to the great points made by the panel. The first one, I think the SAC main task is to support the implementation, not to continue to do more diagnosis, better PowerPoints. It's important to really focus on the implementation of those national pathways. And there are many countries already preparing those national pathways. So it will be very important, I think, to assess, to have a scientific assessment of those national pathways to see, not to evaluate any country, but to make sure that they have a scientific base. Otherwise, it will be hard to implement. The second point is that I think that evidence base for that decision making to implement the pathways need to be based in some metrics, in some indicators. Everybody has indicators, hundreds and hundreds, but perhaps what we need is just a few to get consensus, and then in the future refine and have hundreds of publications on indicators. But in the meantime, I think the world is waiting to have something concrete, not simplistic, but something concrete. So to define, when we are transforming, it is important to define from where we start, to have a baseline, and what do we want to transform? What's the target? Otherwise, we are transforming, but we don't know what the end of the transformation will be. And the final one, to do all of this, I think we in the Scientific Advisory Committee are just a group of good people trying to help. This is the first time that we're going to meet this week, but I think the real action has to happen at the national level, at the national agricultural research systems at the national level, and perhaps with the help of an international great group like the CGR and many other sources of applied knowledge to do all of this. Otherwise, the Scientific Advisory Committee alone won't be able to do it. Thank you.
Very much, Ruben, and definitely SAC, it's a network of networks, so definitely. So I have Ratan Lal, and then I have two person there, and then Dr. Mohammed. Yeah, Dr. Ratan Lal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a great honor to be a member of the Scientific Advisory Committee. The comments made were excellent. I particularly noted healthy ecosystems comprising of plant, animals, and microbiota. Without the word soil, unfortunately, plants, animal, and microbiota would be orphaned and homeless. They cannot survive. Including soil into this healthy ecosystem, therefore, will give them a habitat to thrive and flourish and make humanity happy and prosperous. Why soil? Because soil provides us nourishment that feeds our body. It provides us beauty that feeds and nourishes our soul. And it provides us the ecosystem services that nourishes the nature and the planet itself. Do not forget to leave it out.
Thank you very much. True advocate for soil. Thank you very much, Dr. Ratan. Yeah, I have both of you, but please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Andrew Julius Bender. I come from the Bioinnovation Institute in Denmark. It's really interesting and refreshing to hear two strictly, commonly not used together words. There is the empirical and then the lived science. I think that's in many ways, because when you have defined science, you went by the empirical dimension in many cases, but now when you talk about lived science, I think that connects us to a lot of the debates we've had in other places in relation to how about indigenous groups, how about rural women that will not access the kind of empirical data that you're bringing in. So in a way, so what we could build on this is when we are gathering data and feeding in the future of this whole scientific build-up, I think then that starts giving us a way of creating indicators for gathering that kind of data and actually making it systematic so it fits into what we are doing. And maybe that actually closes some of the gaps in knowledge that feeds into improving our agri-food systems. It was also refreshing to talk about the example of your father, the technology he used and how that comes back as innovation, and the possibility of us actually looking at innovation from different, it's not just the technology or new things, but also looking at the ways people have been living and how those feed into what we are defining in the future. So thank you so much for this discussion.
Thank you very much, Andrew. So I have one speaker here and I have 3 on this side. I hope we can take more. Shakuntala, you tell me when I need to stop. Yes, the gentleman with the glasses? Go ahead.
Sure. Hello, I'm Francisco Mesa of the Government of Mexico. I want to speak in Spanish. I hope that's all right. Yo quisiera hacer un comentario, una pregunta, pero entiendo que no se puede responder porque vamos a estar por el tiempo, entonces la dejo un poco hacia la reflexión. Yo soy funcionario del Gobierno de México, soy abogado, así que soy de los que tienen el tiempo contado, como bien mencionaban, porque no tenemos esta trascendencia en la esfera científica como ustedes desde el consorcio y desde estas posiciones sí las tienen, pero quisiera decir un dato relevante. En 2017, el Instituto de Investigación, el INEGI, de Instituto Nacional de Estadística y Geografía del Gobierno de México, hizo una encuesta de percepción de la ciencia de las comunidades. Entonces, la población respondió en un 45%, 45 de cada 100, consideró que debido a sus conocimientos, los investigadores científicos tienen un poder que los hace peligrosos. Esta es una respuesta que nos preocupa para la percepción que puede tener en ocasiones la población. Pero también esa misma población encuestada respondió que el crecimiento económico de un país está estrechamente relacionado con la calidad y cantidad de sus investigaciones. Esto lo respondieron en un 72%. ¿Por qué comento esto? Porque en ocasiones mantenemos una brecha entre la función política y la función científica y tecnológica que creo que tenemos que reducir. Y en este orden de ideas, yo quisiera plantear una pregunta que si fuera posible responder, o si no, dejemos para la reflexión. Es que tomando en cuenta que las grandes empresas son quienes suelen tener acceso a la ciencia y a la tecnología para la producción de alimentos, ¿cuál es el mejor camino para acercar la ciencia y la tecnología a los pequeños productores de alimentos, para que esto nos permita fortalecer sus capacidades, sobre todo de las comunidades rurales? Es decir, ¿cómo podemos acercar el desarrollo científico y tecnológico a la comunidad? Esa es mi pregunta y punto de reflexión. Agradezco el tiempo y el uso de la palabra. ¿Sería cuánto?
Thank you very much. And believe me, this is one of the very central questions that we are discussing as a scientific advisory committee to the UN Food Systems Summit. So I'm going to go to Dr. Mohammed Hassan.
Thank you very much. My name is Mohammed Hassan, and I am a member of SAC. Just 2 very quick points. The first one is we heard about science and technology to drive innovation. And I think we all agree that this is not sufficient. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. If we really want to scale up the innovation, the S&T innovation, we have to innovate in the area of governance, in the area of social sciences, and in the area of business. And all these innovations have to be integrated. We don't do it one at a time, but they have to be integrated to scale up the innovation and bring it to the market. The second is, again, this is related to the topic of science policy interface, which was mentioned here in this panel, but also mentioned throughout the events yesterday, and I'm sure that will be mentioned again. As you recall, Ismahan, this is an issue that was discussed in detail by the scientific group of the United Nations Food Systems Summit, but we have not reached a conclusion about it. And I think this is an issue that this SAC committee should really take up, quite frankly. There were many models that we discussed before, the IPCC for climate change, the IPBES for biodiversity, or a combination of them, but we really have to talk about it, and we have to at least agree on a model that is simple, that is inclusive, that can produce impact somehow and products. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Dr. Afsana.
Thank you very much. I'm also a member of SAC, and I'm from Bangladesh. And science and innovations, and as Mohammed already said, that how could you accelerate what we have? So one of the things is that for us, I think sharing of knowledge across the countries, and this is very important. We heard in the morning that how many different countries could also learn from some of the small countries or bigger population like Bangladesh. We have very good examples, but I think it's a context specific. So we need to also adapt that how these innovations could be adapted to different countries. But we shouldn't stop ourselves because this is so important, and 2030 is not very far. And we heard about women's and farmers' knowledge. So women's knowledge is so important. Sometimes in our country, 70% women are actually farmers. We forget that they are contributing to the farming system. So how could you take their knowledge? Because, vertical gardening is going on in my country. When I was born, many years back, I saw vertical gardening. But nowadays, we don't promote our own knowledge. And we heard from UAE that, how they have created vertical gardening through Emirates. So I think these needs to be pushed. So small knowledge, that we call it subjugate knowledge, exists in the country. I think it should be shared, and it should be, of course, evidence-based. And secondly, the farmers' knowledge. I do have so much respect for the farmers because I was in an NGO which is called BRAC. So when I went to the field, I actually see that how people communicate with the farmers, because the farmers' knowledge actually support us to develop our innovations. And whatever Bangladesh has developed, of course, science is important, but at the same time, the knowledge of farmers should be acknowledged, and that's really important to accelerate what we have been doing across the world. So agri-food system, that's, of course, included the agriculture and also the fisheries and other things. I think in my country, I can see that this is a country of so much water and fish, but we have less innovations there. So I would also request that we need to invest in these specific areas. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Afsana. Thank you for speaking up from your heart and from your country and your own experience with farmers. The young lady there, yes.
Thank you. Let me move this. My name is Wageshi Gitata Kiriga, and I'm from Kenya. I am not a scientist, but as a person who has been listening to what has been discussed today, I had a couple of observations. The first is that there seems to be a continuation of siloed thinking, and yet we're here to talk about systems thinking and systems approaches. And I'm approaching this as somebody who is not a part of the scientific or the research community, despite the fact that I am here in the capacity of research-based organizations. But I think that the challenge remains, how do you take all of this research that, again, from an outsider seems to be very siloed, and make it practical? Because we've heard from the minister from the UAE who talked about collaboration. Over here, this panel is also talking very collaboratively. But then how are you pairing stakeholders and really listening to what has been going on in these different sections? Yesterday, we heard from FSCI that presented all these different indicators that they've developed. How do those fit in with what the SAC is doing? And how does that then work out for the common citizen and the farmer that the professor talked about? There still seems to be a very big divide between the scientific community and what needs to be done practically. And as somebody who's sitting on the sidelines, I'm not seeing a path where that is happening.
If I may reply very quickly, many of the SAC members are members of the FSCI. So the FSCI is bringing metrics to really monitor the movement and the evolution in food system, and many of us are connected. So we are speaking to each other. It's not two separate paths. I had also, yes, please.
Thank you very much for serving this opportunity for me. My name is Tuyên from the Vietnam delegation. I also work for the Alliance Biodiversity in Seattle. So thanks for sharing information. I really agree with several great ideas and feedback from participants. The first one about we are coming here to talk about food system at different level with multi-sector. But it will take time because different people come from different perspectives, so we can interpret the concept by ourselves, in our way. And those, we have the same language, but we can unpack in the concept in different ways. So the most important if we would like to move system to make the transformation, we should again have some common understanding on what science, technology, innovation can be considered for the system transformation. And whether it's still, if we don't do that, it still continue to talk only production, but still think food system. It's not true. The people in the center not to be consumer. We stem from that and think more not only availability of that, but thinking more about accessibility of food, healthy food, and also affordability of vulnerable groups, and also about acceptability about culture. So all of the thinking further, and that's the most important thing. The second thing, we need also to support further for the implementation, how unpacking the concept of food system transformation in different contexts of the country and build up the hub or something like that for some good practices in the innovation or some practice in different countries, different national level, etc. For us to have good practice to be considered really innovation in food system. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, and I think with that, Jennifer, the last comment then. Over to you.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. My name is Jennifer Clapp, and I'm a member of the Scientific Advisory Committee. And just really appreciate the comments of the panelists about the work, the upcoming work of the Scientific Advisory, but also reflecting on the past day and a half in this summit where we're talking a lot about national pathways and food systems, but also just to raise the importance that we need to consider this because, of course, as was said, we need to think about national and context-specific, but we do need to remember there are huge inequalities within the global economy, within the global food system, that these national contexts exist within. And so as a scientific advisory, I think it's important for us to remember that those national contexts take place within a global context, and I do think that that's really important for us to keep in mind if we're taking a real systems perspective in how we address these issues. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and maybe with that, let me attempt to really give a little bit of a closing remark and some reflection of what we heard today. I think we started with a very positive note from all ministers and from our Director General, whereby we heard that freedom is for all. We heard about the right to food. We heard about really that there is in the science part of the solution, that the science should give us the solution to the challenges where we are, and we need to believe in it, but we need to interpret it as well. And in the interpretation, it's a problem sometimes, and we need to agree on certain aspect of that interpretation. What we heard as well, and I think really that goes back to the question on silos and the question on how would we apply it. As scientists, we tend to dissecate. It's like if you are looking for a problem, you put it in pieces and you try to fix every piece and you bring it together. And as a scientific advisory committee, we don't have really the answer to everything. We're gonna attempt to really help the UN Food System Summit and the national pathways to really chart their path and understand how to transform their agri-food system. And I hear very well that really conducting systemic analysis can help in proposing solutions to those national pathways. And that's where our power is. So we will keep in mind that really the problems and the challenges are numerous, they are interconnected, and they are very complex, and they are different from ecosystem to ecosystem. And here we heard a lot from the panelists how important it is to think multidisciplinary, how important it is to think about innovation across the board, not only technological innovation, but societal innovation, financial innovation, business models, you name it, all innovations. For me, really, I think we have to look more to nature. Nature is abundant, and it's abundant by its biodiversity. So diversification, it's one of the key points for us to get out of this big, mega challenging position. I think diversification is abundance, and diversification is wealth, and diversification is beauty, and diversification is inclusive as well. And now I want to share with you one component that I think really it's very important in my view as chief scientist. When the climate change starts as being a priority, when we start talking about carbon dioxide in the air, the sector that ripped and the sector that took really the front, it's energy. Energy is the problem in climate change. Most of the emission is coming from energy, but they are the ones that really benefited from the climate finance, whereas the agriculture sector didn't. And the why it didn't, it's because we were not organized as a sector. The sector was fragmented, and there was a lot of misunderstanding between the people. Whereas if you think about it, what can we really sequester carbon? Nothing but nature. It's oceans, it's soils, and it's plants. So those are the only ones that can sequester carbon. So when we talk about carbon finance, which is the finance of tomorrow, which is the money that's going to be in the market tomorrow, it's agriculture sector. And I think we have to get our guts together and change the narrative. And science can help us really showcase how the agriculture sector can solve the climate change issue while still feeding people and getting us to the zero hunger. The other idea that I want to leave you with it is that we are at our best to innovate. I mean, science was never this beautiful. Science was never this really very well interconnected. With the advancement in AI, with the investment in biology and genomics, we are at our best really to innovate. So if we can solve it, we're going to solve it today. If we don't solve it today, it wouldn't happen ever. And here I want to really mention there are many inventions that are beautiful, and we heard about the AI and how AI gonna really change the way we are looking at things and our life as a whole. We heard as well that we need to target and we need to tackle the digital gap. But also the AI and the technology will help us leapfrog, particularly in the global south. But I want to leave you with one of the areas that we have been working around for many, many years, which is perennial grains, perennial rice, or perennial wheat. Those are areas that it has been in the making for many years, but finally we got a variety of rice, actually in both Oryza sativa and Oryza japonica, we have now perennial rice. So if we can really change our choices that we did about 300 years ago, maybe 1,000 years ago, of going for certain species in plant or animal, we can now use science and do much more quicker with other species that are better for our ecosystems. So with that, I'm very excited to be part of the SAC. I think it's a great group that can really help the UN Food System Summit, the transformation of agri-food system, with all the aspects that we mentioned, with really inclusiveness, with equitability, with really looking at being more fair than what we did in the last century or so. So it's a great group that really is giving us of their time to work with national pathways. We thank you very much for your time, all of you, and we are very happy to see you face to face today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elufa, for leading the engagement with the audience. And thank you, audience, for your engagement. And we, the SAC, have a lot to think about, a lot to do, and we look forward to working with you in the future as we mobilize into action what we heard today. Thank you so much.